Welcome back. I trust you've brought orchids, or at least a decent case. In the sultry haze of a 1952 New York summer, a single page of yellowed parchment, scrawled with the jagged ink of a dead poet's hand, arrived at a collector's door, promising literary immortality. By midnight, its owner lay dead, froth on his lips. The manuscript vanished into the city's shadows. Was it the work of Edgar Allan Poe's ghost, or a killer whose pen was dipped in poison? In the brownstone of Nero Wolfe, where orchids bloom and secrets fester, the truth waits to be unearthed, sharp, treacherous, and as dark as the ink that killed. Chapter 1. The manuscript arrives. The summer of 1952 draped New York City in a humid shroud, the kind that made your shirt cling like a guilty conscience and turned the streets into a haze of sweat and exhaust. It was the sort of afternoon where even the pigeons on West 35th Street seemed too lethargic to squabble over crumbs. Inside the brownstone, where I, Archie Goodwin, played the roles of confidential assistant, legman, and occasional irritant to the great Nero Wolfe, the air was cooler, but no less heavy. The office smelled of old leather, ink, and the faint musk of Wolfe's 10,000 orchids blooming upstairs. I was at my desk, nursing a tall glass of milk and flipping through the sports section of the Gazette, when the doorbell chimed with a persistence that suggested trouble in high heels. Fritz Brenner, our chef and household maestro, answered the door with his usual grace. Moments later, he ushered in a woman who could have walked straight out of a Bogart flick, tall, brunette, with a figure that curved like a jazz riff and eyes that held secrets sharper than a switchblade. She wore a navy dress that hugged her like it was paid to, and a hat tilted just so, casting a shadow across her cheekbones. Her perfume hit me first, something floral with a bite, like roses laced with bourbon. She carried herself with the poise of someone who knew how to get what she wanted, and right now she wanted Nero Wolfe. "Mr. Goodwin, I presume?" Her voice was low, husky, the kind that could make a man forget his own name. "I'm Lydia Hargrove." "I need to see Mr. Wolfe. It's urgent." Wolfe was ensconced in his oversized chair behind the desk, a fortress of yellow silk shirt and brown vest, his bulk filling the room like a monument to stubborn genius. He was deep in a book, some obscure botanical treatise, judging by the Latin on the spine, and didn't bother looking up. His fingers, thick as sausages but nimble as a violinist's, turned a page. "Archie," he said, his voice a rumble of displeasure, "inform Mrs. Hargrove that I am occupied. If she seeks miracles, she might try St. Patrick's Cathedral." I gave her my best disarming grin. "You heard the man? He's communing with his orchids via proxy. Care to tell me what's so urgent? I'm the one who does the running around here." Lydia Hargrove didn't flinch. She stepped forward, her heels clicking on the hardwood, and placed a gloved hand on the edge of my desk. "It's murder, Mr. Goodwin. My husband, Elias Hargrove, was killed 2 days ago. The police call it a heart attack, but I know better. He was poisoned by a manuscript, and now it's gone." That got Wolfe's attention. His eyes, small and sharp beneath the expanse of his forehead, flicked up from the page. "Poisoned by a manuscript?" he repeated, his tone laced with skepticism, but tinged with curiosity. "Preposterous. Elucidate, madam, and be concise." She didn't sit, though I gestured to the red leather chair reserved for clients. Instead, She paced, her movements deliberate, like a cat stalking a shadow. Elias was a collector of rare books and manuscripts. His passion, his obsession, was unparalleled. 2 weeks ago he acquired something extraordinary, an unpublished novella by Edgar Allan Poe titled The Poisoned Pen. He bought it from a dealer named Victor Slade for $50,000. Elias was meticulous. He examined it himself the night he died. I found him in his study, slumped over his desk, the manuscript in his hands. His lips were frothing. By morning, the manuscript was gone, and the police were calling it natural causes. Wolfe closed his book with a thud that echoed like a gavel. Frothing, you say? And the manuscript vanished. Describe the scene. Mrs. Hargrove, omit nothing. She took a breath, steadying herself. It was late, past midnight. Elias had been in his study for hours, alone. I was upstairs reading. I heard a crash, like a glass breaking. I ran down and found him. His face was gray, his hands clutching the pages. The room smelled strange, sharp, like chemicals. I called Dr. Fisk, our physician, but Elias was already gone. The police came, and Dr. Fisk said it was his heart. Elias had a weak one, they claimed, but I know it wasn't. And the safe where he kept the manuscript? It was open, empty. Wolfe's fingers drummed on the desk, a rare sign of engagement. This manuscript, describe it. Quarto-sized, handwritten, ink-faded but legible. Poe's signature was unmistakable, dated 1849. Elias swore it was authentic. He'd spent years chasing rumors of its existence, tracking it to an archive in Baltimore. He said it was Poe's final work, a tale of betrayal and poison written in his own hand. I leaned back, sipping my milk. Sounds like a collector's dream or a con man's jackpot. This Slade, shady type? Lydia's lips tightened. Victor Slade is slippery. He deals in rarities, but his reputation isn't spotless. Elias trusted him, though. Too much? Perhaps. Wolfe grunted, a sound that could mean anything from disdain to intrigue. And you suspect murder because of this alleged poison and theft. Why not consult the police further? Her eyes flashed. Because they won't listen. Inspector Kramer dismissed me, said I was hysterical. But I'm not. Elias was healthy, aside from his heart condition, which was managed. And that manuscript, it's worth a fortune, genuine or not. Someone wanted it, and they killed him for it. Wolfe leaned back, his chair creaking under his seventh of a ton. Archie, your opinion? I shrugged. Sounds like a case. Poisoned pages? That's a new one. But $5,000 says she's serious. I nodded at the check she'd slid across the desk, made out to Nero Wolfe in elegant script. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Mrs. Hargrove, I do not chase specters. If I undertake this, you will provide full access to your husband's study, his papers, and any relevant persons. Archie will conduct inquiries. I require facts, not melodrama. She nodded, her jaw set. You'll have everything. Just find the truth and the manuscript. Wolfe sighed, a gust that could have rattled the windows. Very well. Archie, schedule inspections. Begin with the study and summon Mr. Kramer. He will be vexed, but necessary. I escorted Lydia out, her perfume lingering like a promise of trouble. Back in the office, Wolfe had reopened his book, but wasn't reading. Archie, he said, this Poe manuscript intrigues me. Poison is plausible, arsenic perhaps, or cyanide, absorbed through the skin. But the theft, that is the knot. Untie it. I grinned. You're hooked, aren't you? Poe and poison, it's like catnip for you. He glared. "Do not be insufferable." The Hargrove mansion on the Upper East Side was a mausoleum of wealth, all marble floors and oak-paneled walls, the kind of place where you could smell the money in the dust. I arrived the next morning, notebook in hand, to find Inspector Kramer already there, his bulldog face redder than usual. He was chewing an unlit cigar, a habit that meant he was either furious or out of ideas. "Goodwin," he growled, "tell your boss to butt out." Hargrove had a bad ticker. Doc confirmed it. No poison, no murder, just a widow with too much imagination. I flashed my most irritating smile. "Kramer, you know Wolfe. He smells something fishy, and it ain't last night's cod. Let me see the study." He grumbled, but waved me through. The study was a book lover's fever dream. Floor-to-ceiling shelves crammed with leather-bound volumes, a massive desk littered with papers, and a safe in the corner, its door slightly ajar. The air had that chemical tang Lydia mentioned, faint but sharp, like turpentine mixed with something nastier. I sniffed around, literally, and noted a glass shard under the desk, remnants of a tumbler. No manuscript, no obvious poison bottles, just stacks of letters, auction catalogs, and a ledger detailing Elias's purchases. I started with the safe. Heavy combination lock, no signs of forced entry. Whoever opened it knew the code or was a genius with a stethoscope. Inside, a few envelopes and a velvet-lined box, empty. Elias's desk held more clues, an inkwell, a blotter stained with smudges, and a notebook with cryptic entries about Poe, 1849, and Slade, 50K. I bagged a few papers for Wolfe, including a letter from Reginald Thorne, a rival collector, congratulating Elias on the acquisition, but with an edge of resentment. "You've outbid me again, old friend. Enjoy your prize, for now." Next, I interviewed Amelia Voss, Elias's secretary. She was a mousy woman in her 30s, with wire-rimmed glasses and a nervous habit of twisting her hair. "Mr. Hargrove was thrilled about the manuscript," she said, perched on a chair like a bird ready to bolt. He locked it in the safe right after examining it. Said it was Poe's, no doubt, his handwriting, his style. He was obsessive that night. "Alone?" I asked. "Yes, I was upstairs typing correspondence. I heard nothing until Mrs. Hargrove screamed. Her alibi was shaky, nobody to confirm her whereabouts, but her eyes were too sharp for someone just taking dictation. I filed that away. Dr. Harlan Fisk was next, a thin man with a face like a disappointed accountant. Elias had a heart condition, he insisted. I prescribed rest and a mild tonic. His death was unfortunate, but not unexpected. "Tonic?" I pressed. "What kind?" He hesitated. "A standard preparation. Nothing toxic, I assure you." I didn't buy his calm act. Something about his fidgety hand screamed guilt, or at least secrets. I called Reginald Thorne, who answered from his penthouse with a voice smooth as aged whiskey. "Hargrove beat me to the Poe," he said, chuckling. "Fair play, but poisoned. Sounds like one of Poe's own tales. I was at a gala that night. Hundreds saw me." Solid alibi, maybe too solid. Victor Slade, the dealer, was harder to pin down. His shop was closed, a "back later" sign dangling crookedly. I left a note and headed back to the brownstone, my head buzzing with names and motives. Wolfe was in the dining room, demolishing a plate of chardonnay with beurre noir, when I reported. I laid out the details, the study, the chemical smell, the empty safe, the suspects. He listened, sipping beer, his eyes half closed. "The odor, Archie," he said finally. "Describe it precisely." "Sharp, acrid, like paint thinner with a bitter edge. Not quite medicinal, but close." He nodded. "Possibly arsenic, or a derivative. Applied to the manuscript's pages, absorbed through the skin, a slow, insidious poison. But the theft complicates matters. Why remove the evidence? And if a fake, why kill for it?" I leaned forward. "You think it's a fake?" "I think nothing yet. Facts, Archie. Summon the suspects for dinner tomorrow. Fritz will prepare something persuasive. And find this Slade. His absence is conspicuous. I spent the afternoon tracking Slade, finally locating him through a tip from Saul Panzer, our go-to operative. Slade was holed up in a dive bar on the Bowery, nursing a gin and looking like a man expecting a ghost. I didn't approach, yet. Instead, I watched him slip into a back room with a gaunt man whose fingers were stained with ink. Forger? Accomplice? I jotted it down for Wolfe. Back home, Fritz was already planning the menu: lobster bisque, roast duck, and a claret to loosen tongues. Wolfe, in the plant rooms with Theodore, his orchid nursemaid, was pruning a cattleya with surgical precision. "Archie," he called, "this Poe business is a tangle. The manuscript's authenticity is secondary to the poison's application. Someone knew Elias would handle it intimately. That is the fulcrum." I nodded, though I wasn't sure what fulcrum meant in this context. "So, we grill them tomorrow?" "Indeed. And observe their hands, Archie. The poisoner's fingers may betray them: ink, residue, or guilt." The next morning I hit the pavement again, digging into the suspects' backgrounds. Amelia Voss had a history of dead-end jobs, always near rare books. Coincidence or design? Fisk's medical license had been suspended once, years ago, for unorthodox prescriptions. Thorne was a shark in the auction world, with rumors of strong-arming smaller collectors. Slade, a ghost with a rap sheet for fraud, but no convictions. The gaunt man from the bar turned up in Saul's network. Otto Krebs, a forger with a knack for mimicking 19th-century scripts. I reported to Wolfe over lunch, veal cutlets and a salad that could have been art. He chewed thoughtfully, then said, "Krebs is a key, Archie. A forger suggests a fake manuscript, but the poison suggests intent beyond fraud. We need his testimony." I spent the afternoon arranging the dinner, sending telegrams to Lydia, Amelia, Fisk, Thorne, and a reluctant Kramer, who agreed only after I hinted at Wolfe's theory. Slade was still AWOL, but I left a message at his shop. By evening, I was back in the study, poring over Elias's ledger. One entry caught my eye: a payment to Krebs, $2,000, marked consultation. For what? Authentication? Or something else? As the sun set, casting long shadows through the brownstone's windows, I felt the case tightening like a noose. Wolfe was right. The manuscript was the bait, but the poison was the hook. Someone had planned this with care, weaving a puzzle worthy of Poe himself. Tomorrow's dinner would be a showdown, and I'd be watching every glance, every gesture, for the telltale heart of a killer. Chapter 2. The Scene of the Crime. The morning after Lydia Hargrove's visit, I stepped out of the brownstone into a New York City still stewing in its own humidity, the kind that made your collar feel like a wet dish rag by the time you hit the sidewalk. My destination was the Hargrove Mansion on East 74th Street, a stone's throw from Central Park, but a world away from the grit of the Bowery. I had my notebook, a pencil, and a hunch that this case was about to get as twisted as a corkscrew in a noir thriller. Nero Wolfe had sent me to inspect Elias Hargrove's study, the supposed scene of the crime, with orders to miss nothing, down to the dust motes. He was upstairs in the plant rooms, fussing over his orchids, leaving me to do the legwork. Typical. The Hargrove place was a monument to old money, the kind that bought silence and secrets along with the marble floors and gilt-framed portraits. The butler, a gaunt number named Clarence with eyes like a basset hound, let me in without a word, his face suggesting he'd seen too many visitors since Elias's death. The foyer smelled of wax polish and faded roses, and the air carried a weight, like the house itself was holding its breath. Clarence led me up a curving staircase, past a gallery of stern-faced ancestors, to the study on the second floor. The room was a collector's shrine, a noir snapshot frozen in time. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined 3 walls, crammed with volumes that looked older than the Constitution, their spines cracked but proud. A massive oak desk dominated the center, its surface a chaos of papers, ink bottles, and a magnifying glass left askew, as if Elias had been interrupted mid-thought. A leather armchair sat by a window overlooking a courtyard garden, its cushions sagging from years of use. The safe, a squat iron beast with a combination dial, stood in a corner, its door slightly ajar, like a mouth caught mid-sentence. The air had that chemical bite Lydia mentioned, faint but unmistakable, like turpentine with a bitter undertone. I scribbled it down. Odor. Sharp, acrid, not quite medicinal. Inspector Kramer was already there, his bulldog jowls set in a scowl, his unlit cigar working overtime. 2 uniformed cops hovered near the door, looking bored but alert. "Goodwin," Kramer growled. "What's Wolfe playing at?" "This is a closed case." Hargrove's heart gave out. "End of story. You're wasting my time." I flashed a grin, the one that always got under his skin. "Kramer, you know Wolfe. He doesn't buy heart attack when there's a missing manuscript and a widow swearing murder. Let me poke around. If it's nothing, I'll buy you a cigar." He snorted but stepped aside, muttering something about Wolfe's damn theatrics. I started with the desk, careful not to smudge anything that might matter. Papers were scattered like leaves after a storm. Auction catalogs, letters from dealers, a receipt for $50,000 to Victor Slade. Dated 2 weeks ago. One sheet caught my eye, a handwritten note in Elias's spidery script. Poe MS Authentic, 1849, signature verified. Slade's word shaky, but text undeniable. Next to it, a blotter with ink stains, some fresh, some old, and a faint smudge that looked like a fingerprint. I bagged the note and a few others for Wolfe, using tweezers to avoid contamination. The safe was next. No scratches, no pry marks. Just open, like someone had whispered the combination. Inside, a velvet-lined tray held nothing but dust. Whatever had been here, Poe manuscript or otherwise, was long gone. I checked the floor around it, finding a single glass shard, curved like it came from a tumbler. I pocketed it, noting its faint chemical smell matching the room's odor. Could be nothing, could be everything. I moved to the shelves, scanning titles. First editions of Dickens, Hawthorne, a dog-eared Moby Dick. Elias had taste, or at least deep pockets. One shelf held a row of Poe volumes, Tales of the Grotesque and Arabesque, The Raven, a biography with notes in the margins. I flipped through it, finding a marked passage about Poe's final days, cryptic and feverish, hinting at an unpublished work. No poison pen, though. I made a mental note to ask Wolfe about Poe's bibliography. His memory for arcana was sharper than mine. Clarence hovered nearby, silent as a shadow. I tried him for information. "You see anything the night Mr. Hargrove died?" His lips thinned. "I was in my quarters, sir. Heard Mrs. Hargrove's cry around 1 a.m., found her in here over his body. Terrible sight. Anyone else around? Staff? Visitors?" "Miss Voss was upstairs. Dr. Fisk arrived shortly after. No one else. To my knowledge, I thanked him and moved on to Amelia Voss, Elias's secretary, who was waiting in the library down the hall. She was a slight woman, mid-30s, with mousy brown hair and glasses that magnified her eyes into something almost fierce. She sat at a table, sorting papers, her hands moving with a precision that didn't match her nervous demeanor. "Mr. Goodwin," she said, barely looking up, "I've told the police everything. Mr. Hargrove worked late that night, alone. I was typing in my room when it happened." "Typing what?" I asked, leaning against a bookshelf, casual but watching her hands. They paused, just for a second. "Correspondence. Auction bids, thank you notes. Routine. Routine enough to miss a man dying downstairs?" Her eyes flicked up, sharp. "I'm not deaf, Mr. Goodwin. I heard the crash, but by the time I got there, Mrs. Hargrove was already screaming. The manuscript was on the desk then, in his hands. I saw it. Quarto, handwritten, Poe's script. He'd been studying it all evening, and the safe? Open or closed?" "Closed, I think?" I didn't look closely. I was shaken. Her alibi was as thin as her frame, but her knowledge of the manuscript was specific. Pressed. "You ever meet Victor Slade? Or Reginald Thorne?" "Slade delivered the manuscript 2 weeks ago. Shifty man, but Mr. Hargrove trusted him. Thorne, I know of him. He called once, furious about losing the bid. Said the manuscript should have been his. I filed that away. Next was Dr. Harlan Fisk, who I found in the parlor, sipping tea like he was auditioning for a funeral director. He was thin, with a face carved from worry, his fingers tapping the saucer. "Mr. Goodwin, I assure you, Elias's death was tragic but natural. His heart was weak. Arrhythmia, documented for years. I prescribed a tonic to calm his nerves, nothing more." "What's in the tonic?" I asked, notebook out. "Standard compounds, potassium bromide, a touch of digitalis, perfectly safe in small doses. Any chance someone spiked it?" His cup rattled. "Preposterous. I keep my bag locked. I let him stew and called Reginald Thorne from the mansion's phone." His voice was smooth, cultured, with a hint of amusement. "Goodwin, is it? Wolfe's errand boy? Elias won the Poe Fair and Square. I was at the Metropolitan Club the night he died. Alibis galore. Poison? Sounds like Lydia's been reading too much Poe herself." I hung up, his chuckle lingering like a bad taste. Back in the study, I took one last look, sketching the layout. Desk, safe, shelves, window. The chemical smell was strongest near the desk, where the glass shard had been. I'd need Wolfe's brain on that one. Back at the brownstone, Fritz was prepping lunch, lamb chops with rosemary and a cucumber salad. Wolfe was in the dining room, a bottle of beer sweating beside his plate. I laid out my findings, the study's chaos, the empty safe, the glass shard, the chemical odor, and the suspect's stories. "Amelia's cagey," I said. "Fisk's nervous, Thorne's too smooth, and Slade's a ghost. I'll track him tonight." Wolfe chewed, eyes half closed. "The odor, Archie? It suggests a poison, arsenic perhaps, or cyanide, applied to the manuscript's pages. Slow absorption through the skin. the glass shard, test it. And the safe's condition implies familiarity. Someone close to Hargrove, like Lydia, I ventured. Possibly. Or the secretary, with access. Find Slade. His role is pivotal. I spent the afternoon on the phone, setting up the dinner Wolfe wanted. Lydia confirmed, her voice tight. Amelia agreed, hesitant. Fisk grumbled, but complied. Thorne laughed it off. I'll come for the food, if nothing else. Kramer was last, spitting nails, but promising to show with Sergeant Stebbins. Slade? Still missing, but Saul Panzer was on his trail. As evening fell, I headed to the Bowery, where Saul had spotted Slade in a bar called the Black Cat, a fitting name for a Poe case. The place was a dive, all sticky floors and flickering neon. Slade was in a corner booth, hunched over a gin, his tweed suit rumpled. With him was the gaunt man I'd seen before, his fingers black with ink. I stayed in the shadows, sipping a soda, and watched them argue in low tones. Slade slipped the man an envelope. The man pocketed it and left. I followed him to a tenement on Houston Street, noting the address. Krebs, I figured. The forger? Back home, Wolfe was in the office, a fresh beer in hand, staring at the ceiling. Slade's with a forger named Otto Krebs, I reported. They're cozy, but not happy. Envelope changed hands. Money or papers? Wolfe nodded. Krebs may hold the key to the manuscript's authenticity. Arrange for him to attend tomorrow's dinner, if possible. And Archie, watch Miss Voss closely. Her hands, her eyes. She knows more than she says. I grinned. You're smelling blood, aren't you? I smell deception, he corrected, and it is rank. Proceed. The case was thickening, like one of Fritz's sauces. The study had given me pieces, smells, shards, empty safes. But the puzzle was far from solved. Tomorrow's dinner would be a pressure cooker, and I'd be there, eyes wide, ready to catch the first crack in someone's story. Chapter 3. The Dealer's Den. The morning after my visit to the Hargrove mansion, New York was still simmering under a gray sky, the air thick with the promise of rain and the faint tang of garbage from the alleys. I was up early, fueled by Fritz's coffee and a plate of buckwheat pancakes, ready to track down Victor Slade, the antiquarian dealer who'd sold Elias Hargrove the fateful Poe manuscript. Wolfe had been clear. Slade was the pivot of this case, a slippery cog in a machine of deceit, and I needed to pin him down before he vanished into the city's underbelly. My destination was his shop on Bleecker Street, a corner of Greenwich Village where the past clung to the present like damp cobwebs. Slade's shop, Arcana Antiqua, was a hole in the wall squeezed between a jazz club and a pawn shop, its faded sign barely legible under years of grime. The window displayed a single leather-bound book, its title obscured by dust, and a brass bell that jingled feebly as I pushed open the door. Inside, the air was a cocktail of mildew, old paper, and something sharper. Ink, maybe, or desperation. Shelves sagged under the weight of crumbling tomes, manuscripts tied with twine, and glass cases holding yellowed letters penned by names long dead. The place was a noir set piece, all shadows and secrets, the kind of spot where you'd expect to find a body stashed behind a first edition. Slade was at the counter, a wiry man in his 40s with a pencil mustache and eyes that darted like roaches when the light hits. His tweed suit was tailored but frayed, and his fingers twitched as he sorted a stack of vellum sheets. "Mr. Goodwin," he said, his voice oily as a used car salesman's. I expected you sooner. Wolfe's reputation precedes him. I leaned against a case, casual but close enough to crowd him. Let's skip the charm, Slade. Tell me about the Poe manuscript. Where'd you get it, and why's it worth killing for? He laughed, a nervous trill that didn't match his cool exterior. Killing? You've been reading too many pulps. The manuscript's genuine. The poisoned pen, Poe's last work, handwritten, 1849. I bought it from an estate sale in Baltimore, a private collector's hoard. Elias Hargrove paid $50,000, a steal for such a rarity. I raised an eyebrow. No provenance? Just your word it's Poe? His smile tightened. My word and Hargrove's expertise. He verified it himself. Ink, paper, handwriting. He was ecstatic. Ecstatic enough to die over it, I said. Where were you the night he croaked? Slade poured a scotch from a bottle under the counter, offering me a glass. I waved off. I was with a client. Discreet business, you understand? Downtown, a private sale. I got home around 2 a.m. Client got a name? He hesitated, swirling his drink. Reginald Thorne. He's a collector, like Hargrove. We discussed other acquisitions. Thorne again. The rival who'd lost the bid. Funny, I said. Thorne claims he was at a gala that night, surrounded by blue bloods. You saying he lied? Slade's eyes flickered. Perhaps I misremembered the night. It was a busy week. I didn't buy it. His story was shakier than a drunk on roller skates. I pressed. You ever work with Otto Krebs? Forger, ink-stained fingers, hangs out in dive bars. His hand froze mid-sip. Krebs? Never heard of him, liar, I said, stepping closer. I saw you with him at the Black Cat last night. Envelope changed hands. What was it? Cash for a fake Poe. Slade's face paled, but he recovered fast. You're fishing, Goodwin. I deal in rarities, not forgeries. Krebs might have been a customer, nothing more. I let it drop, for now. I browsed the shop, picking up a letter supposedly from Hawthorne, noting the ink's odd sheen. This Poe manuscript, describe it. Quarto, 12 pages, black ink with Poe's characteristic flourishes, a tale of poison and betrayal, fitting his style. Hargrove locked it away the day he got it. Locked it where? The safe in his study, I assume. He was paranoid about theft. I left Slade sweating and headed out, but not before slipping a note under his blotter with my number. Call me, or Wolfe calls the cops. I had a feeling he'd bite. On the street, I tailed him discreetly, using tricks Saul Panzer had taught me. Blend with the crowd, keep your hat low. Slade took a cab to the Lower East Side, ducking into a bar called the Raven's Nest, another Poe nod. Inside, he met the gaunt man again, Otto Krebs, I was sure. They huddled in a booth, heads close, voices low. I couldn't hear, but Krebs's hands moved fast, sketching something on a napkin. I snapped a mental picture and left before they spotted me. Back at the brownstone, Fritz was prepping for Wolfe's dinner party, the air rich with the scent of roasting pheasant. Wolfe was in the office, a beer in hand, staring at the globe like it held the answers. I laid out my morning, Slade's shaky alibi, his meeting with Krebs, the shop's eerie vibe. He's hiding something, I said. Claims Thorne was with him, but Thorne's got a gala alibi. And Krebs? He's neck-deep in this. Wolfe grunted, a sound like a bear waking up. Slade is a cog, not the engine. Krebs's role is critical. A forger suggests the manuscript may be fraudulent, but the poison implies intent beyond deceit. Find Krebs, Archie. His hands will tell us much. I nodded, grabbing my hat. "What about the dinner? You still want Slade there?" "Yes, and Krebs, if you can manage it. Their interactions will be illuminating." I spent the afternoon digging into Krebs. Saul Panzer came through with an address, a tenement on Houston Street, the same one I'd tailed him to. I knocked, but no answer. A neighbor, an old woman with a face like a crumpled map, said, "Krebs kept odd hours, always with ink on his fingers and a haunted look. He's an artist," she said, "but not the good kind." I left a note for Krebs, too, hinting at Wolfe's interest. Back home, Wolfe was in the plant rooms, misting a phalaenopsis with the care of a surgeon. "Archie," he said, "the manuscript's authenticity is a shadow. The poison is the substance. Someone applied it deliberately, Slade, Krebs, or another. The dinner will expose their nerves." I grinned. "You're orchestrating a show, aren't you?" "Merely a tableau," he said, snipping a leaf. "Observe their hands, Archie. Ink, tremors, guilt. They will betray the poisoner." As night fell, the brownstone hummed with anticipation. Fritz's menu was set: lobster bisque, duck with cherry sauce, and a burgundy to loosen lips. The suspects were coming: Lydia, Amelia, Fisk, Thorne, Kramer, and maybe Slade and Krebs. The case was a labyrinth, but Wolfe was already mapping it in his head. Me? I was ready to watch the players squirm, knowing one of them had penned a murder as dark as Poe's own tales. Chapter 4. Gathering the Suspects. The brownstone on West 35th Street was a fortress of calm amidst the city's restless pulse, but tonight it was rigged to explode with tension. Fritz Brenner had outdone himself, transforming the dining room into a stage for Nero Wolfe's latest production, a dinner to unravel the threads of Elias Hargrove's murder. The air was thick with the aroma of roast pheasant, endive salad, and a 47 Burgundy that could charm a confession out of a statue. By 7 p.m., the players were assembling, each carrying their own brand of guilt or bravado, ready to face Wolfe's scrutiny under the glow of the chandelier. I, Archie Goodwin, was in my element, playing host, observer, and Wolfe's eyes on the ground. The office, where we'd convene post-dinner, was prepped. The red leather chair for our star suspect, flanked by lesser seats for the supporting cast. Wolfe was in his custom-built throne behind the desk, a fresh beer at hand, his bulk radiating the quiet menace of a man who could solve a murder by thinking harder than most people breathe. My job was to watch, listen, and nudge the suspects into revealing cracks in their facades. Lydia Hargrove arrived first, her navy dress swapped for a black silk number that clung like a mourner's veil, her perfume, roses with that bourbon bite, trailing her like a shadow. She nodded at me, her eyes sharp but weary, as if she'd spent the day wrestling ghosts. Amelia Voss followed, her mousy demeanor offset by a green dress that looked borrowed from a braver woman. Her glasses caught the light, hiding her gaze, but her hands fidgeted, twisting a handkerchief into knots. Dr. Harlan Fisk shuffled in, his thin frame hunched, his suit wrinkled like he'd slept in it. Reginald Thorne swept through the door with the confidence of a man who owned the room, his tailored tuxedo and silver cufflinks screaming old money. Victor Slade slunk in last, his tweed suit rumpled, his mustache twitching like a cornered rat's whiskers. Otto Krebs, the forger, hadn't responded to my note, but I'd left word with Saul Panzer to drag him in if needed. Inspector Kramer crashed the party uninvited, his bulldog face set in a scowl, Sergeant Pearlie Stebbins trailing like a loyal mastiff. "Wolfe," Kramer growled, planting himself in a corner, "this better not be one of your stunts. I'm here for the food, not your theories." Wolfe, unruffled, gestured to the dining room. "Inspector, you're welcome to both. Fritz's pheasant is unparalleled. Sit dinner was a master class in controlled chaos. Fritz served with the precision of a Swiss watch, the pheasant succulent, the salad crisp, the wine flowing like truth serum. I kept my eyes on the suspects, noting their moves. Lydia picked at her food, her gaze darting to Slade, who avoided her eyes. Amelia ate mechanically, her hands steady, but her lips tight. Fisk sipped wine like it was medicine, his fingers tapping the table. Thorne held court, regaling us with tales of his latest auction wins, but his laugh was too loud, his eyes too sharp. Slade barely touched his plate, his fork scraping like a confession he wouldn't voice. Wolfe, at the head of the table, ate with the focus of a monk, but I knew he was cataloging every glance, every pause. After dessert, creme brulee that could make a grown man weep, he led us to the office, where the real show began. He settled into his chair, a beer in hand, and fixed his gaze on the room. "Let us dispense with pleasantries," he said, his voice a low rumble. Elias Hargrove was murdered, poisoned by arsenic applied to the pages of an alleged Poe manuscript, the poisoned pen. The manuscript was stolen, likely to conceal the crime. Each of you had opportunity, motive, or both. I intend to uncover which. The room bristled. Lydia's hand tightened on her purse. "Mr. Wolfe, I told you, it was murder. I want justice." Thorne laughed, a sharp bark. "Justice? Or the manuscript? It's worth a fortune, Lydia. You'd kill to keep it in the family." Her eyes flashed. "How dare you? Elias was my husband." Slade cut in, his voice oily. "Let's not sling mud. I sold Hargrove a genuine Poe. If it was poisoned, someone tampered with it after delivery." Amelia's voice was quiet but sharp. "You'd know about tampering, Mr. Slade. You handled the manuscript before Mr." Hargrove Fisk cleared his throat, his face pale. "I examined Elias." His heart failed. "I saw no signs of poison." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Dr. Fisk, your tonic interests me. Arsenic in small doses is a known component." "Did you leave it unsecured?" Fisk sputtered. "My bag is always locked. I'm a professional." Kramer snorted. "Wolfe, you're fishing." "The coroner's report says heart attack. You've got nothing." Wolfe ignored him, turning to me. "Archie, your findings?" I stood, notebook in hand, enjoying the spotlight. The study had a chemical smell, sharp, bitter, like arsenic. The safe was open, no forced entry. A glass shard on the floor, same smell. Amelia saw the manuscript that night in Elias's hands. Slade's alibi is shaky. He claims he was with Thorne, who says he was at a gala. And Slade's cozy with Otto Krebs, a forger. Slade's mustache twitched. "Krebs is a nobody. I don't deal in fakes." Thorne leaned forward. "Slade's the fraud. He's been peddling dubious manuscripts for years. Hargrove was a fool to trust him." The room erupted, accusations flying like bullets in a speakeasy. Lydia accused Slade of swindling Elias. Slade pointed at Amelia, saying she had access to the study. Amelia snapped that Thorne was jealous, his bids always falling short. Fisk muttered about malpractice suits, his hands shaking. Kramer bellowed for order, but Wolfe sat back, his lips curving slightly, savoring the chaos like a fine wine. "I slipped out during the melee, a move Wolfe had suggested earlier. The suspects' coats hung in the hall, and I rummaged through them, quick and quiet. Lydia's purse held lipstick and a vial of perfume, same rose bourbon scent. Amelia's coat had a notepad with shorthand scribbles, illegible to me. Fisk's bag was locked, but I felt a faint rattle inside. Slade's pockets were empty, save for a crumpled receipt from the Raven's Nest. Thorne's coat was the jackpot, a small vial of clear liquid, unlabeled, tucked in an inner pocket. I palmed it and returned to the office, signaling Wolfe with a nod. He caught it, his eyes glinting. "Mister." "Thorne," he said, voice cutting through the din. "Care to explain the vial in your coat?" Thorne blinked, his charm faltering. "Vial?" "Oh, that. Ink remover, for manuscript restoration." Harmless Wolfe's smile was cold. "Indeed? We shall test it. Archie, secure it for analysis." The room froze, all eyes on Thorne. Lydia's lips parted, Amelia's glasses slipped, Fisk's hand stilled, and Slade looked ready to bolt. Kramer growled, "Wolfe, if that's poison, you've got my attention." Wolfe leaned back, fingers steepled. "The poisoner is among us, and their hands betray them. Ink, residue, intent. Tomorrow we test the vial and summon Mr. Krebs. For now, enjoy Fritz's coffee. It is clarifying." As Fritz served espresso, I watched the suspects. Lydia's poise was cracking, her fingers white on her cup. Amelia's eyes darted to Thorne, then away. Fisk stared at his shoes, Slade at the door. Thorne sipped his coffee, his grin forced. The air was thick with suspicion, and I knew Wolfe was orchestrating this like a maestro, waiting for the crescendo. The vial was a clue, but the real answers lay in the shadows of their glances, and in Krebs, the forger who hadn't shown. I'd find him tomorrow, and the puzzle would tighten, dark and intricate as Poe's own pen. Chapter 5. The Forger's Shadow. The morning after Wolfe's dinner party, New York was cloaked in a drizzle that turned the streets into a slick, gray mirror, reflecting the city's mood, suspicious, restless, and ready to spill its secrets. I was up early, fueled by Fritz's omelet and a pot of coffee strong enough to wake a corpse. My mission was to track down Otto Krebs, the ink-stained forger who'd been cozy with Victor Slade at the Raven's Nest. Wolfe was convinced Krebs held a piece of the puzzle, maybe the whole damn frame, and I wasn't about to let him slip through the cracks. The vial from Thorne's coat, now locked in Wolfe's safe for analysis, was burning a hole in my mind. But Krebs was the priority. A forger in a case about a poisoned Poe manuscript? That was no coincidence. I headed to Houston Street, where Saul Panzer had pegged Krebs's tenement. The building was a sagging relic, its brick facade crumbling like an old book left in the rain. The air smelled of damp laundry and yesterday's garbage, and the hallway was lit by a single bulb that flickered like it was on its last legs. I knocked on Krebs's door. 3B, third floor, no answer. The neighbor, the old woman with the crumpled map face, was sweeping her stoop. "He's in and out like a ghost," she said, eyeing me. "Came home late, ink on his hands, muttering about papers." "Try the basement. He's got a workshop there." The basement was a dungeon, all damp concrete and flickering fluorescence. I found Krebs's setup behind a padlocked door, which I coaxed open with a lockpick Saul had taught me to use. Inside was a forger's paradise, easels with half-finished manuscripts, bottles of ink labeled with dates and formulas, a microscope for studying paper fibers, and a stack of vellum sheets that looked older than Methuselah. The air carried that same chemical bite from Hargrove's study, sharp, bitter, like arsenic's cousin. On a workbench, I spotted a napkin with a sketch, a page layout with Poe-like flourishes, marked PP 1849. The poisoned pen? I pocketed it, careful not to smudge the ink. Krebs was there, hunched over a desk, his gaunt frame illuminated by a gooseneck lamp. His fingers, black with ink, moved like spiders across a sheet of parchment. He jumped when I cleared my throat. Otto Krebs? Archie Goodwin, working for Nero Wolfe. Let's talk about Victor Slade and a certain Poe manuscript. His eyes, bloodshot and wary, darted to the door. I don't know nothing about no Poe, he said, voice like gravel. I'm an artist, not a crook. Artist, huh? I leaned against an easel, casual but close. Then why's Slade passing you envelopes in dive bars? And this sketch looks like a blueprint for the poisoned pen. Spill it, Krebs, or Wolfe drags you to his office, and he's not as nice as me. Krebs wiped his hands on a rag, leaving black streaks. Slade hired me to authenticate, that's all. He brought me a manuscript, quarto, 12 pages, Poe's script, said it was from Baltimore. I told him it was a fake. Good one, but fake. Paper's right, ink's close, but the handwriting's off, too perfect. Poe's was messier, feverish. Slade didn't care, sold it to Hargrove anyway. I raised an eyebrow. You're saying you didn't forge it? Not that one, he snapped, then caught himself. I mean, I don't forge. I consult. Sure you do. I stepped closer, noting a vial of clear liquid on the workbench like the one from Thorne's coat. What's this? Ink remover, like Thorne's got. Krebs's face tightened. Solvent. For cleaning pens. Harmless. I didn't buy it, but I bagged the vial anyway, labeling it for Wolfe. You ever work with Reginald Thorne? He's got a beef with Hargrove, and you're the type he'd hire to stick it to him. Krebs's hand shook. Thorne came to me months ago, wanted a Poe novella forged. Something to scam Hargrove. I refused. Too risky. Hargrove's no fool, and Thorne's got a temper. Alibi for the night Hargrove died? Home, working. Alone shaky, like Amelia's. I left Krebs with a warning. Wolfe wants you at the brownstone tonight. 7 sharp. Don't make me come back. He nodded, his eyes haunted, and I headed out, the napkin and vial in my pocket. Back at the brownstone, Fritz was prepping lunch, grilled sole with lemon butter and a watercress salad. Wolfe was in the office, a beer in hand, studying the papers I'd brought from Hargrove's study. I laid out my morning, Krebs's workshop, the fake manuscript, Thorne's offer, the vial. Krebs says the Poe's a fraud, I said, handing over the napkin, but someone poisoned it, and Krebs is neck deep. Wolfe examined the sketch, his lips pursing. The forgery is secondary. The poison is the act. Arsenic likely applied to the pages. Krebs's hands describe them ink-stained, shaky, like he's been dipping in something he shouldn't. Wolfe nodded. He knows more than he admits. The vial, send it to Dr. Vollmer for analysis with Thorne's, and summon the suspects again. Krebs must attend. I spent the afternoon on the phone, confirming the dinner. Lydia was curt, Amelia hesitant, Fisk evasive, Thorne amused, Slade nervous. Krebs agreed, his voice tight. I dropped the vials at Doc Vollmer's, our go-to for medical and chemical analysis, with a note for rush results. Then I hit the streets again, checking Krebs's story. A contact at the library confirmed no record of a Poe novella called The Poisoned Pen, but Poe's final years were murky. Rumors of lost works weren't new. Thorne's gala alibi held up. A society page in the Times placed him at the Metropolitan Club, surrounded by witnesses. Back home, Wolfe was in the plant rooms, inspecting a dendrobium with Theodore. "Archie," he said, snipping a stem, "the manuscript's authenticity is a distraction. The poisoner used it as a weapon, fake or not. Krebs's refusal to forge for Thorne suggests loyalty or fear. Tonight, watch his hands, his eyes. He will crack." I grinned. "You're betting on a show, aren't you?" "A revelation," he corrected. "The poisoner's shadow is long, but we will shine a light." As evening settled, the brownstone hummed with Fritz's preparations: beef Wellington, asparagus with hollandaise, and a claret to loosen tongues. The suspects would gather again, Krebs included, and I'd be watching for the telltale flinch, the nervous glance that would point to the killer. The case was a labyrinth, but Wolfe was already threading the needle, and I was ready to pull the string. Chapter 6. Ink and Intrigue. The drizzle from the previous day had given way to a crisp autumn morning in New York, the kind where the air snaps at your heels and the leaves in Central Park start whispering about winter. I was back on the pavement, armed with handwriting samples I'd collected from the suspects, letters from Lydia, notes from Amelia, receipts from Slade, a prescription slip from Fisk, and a business card from Thorne. Even Krebs had scribbled a quick note when I'd pressed him. My task was to lay them before Nero Wolfe, like offerings to an oracle, hoping his genius would divine the poisoner's hand from the loops and curls of ink. The brownstone was alive with Fritz's breakfast aromas, eggs Benedict with hollandaise that could make angels weep. But I had no time to linger. Wolfe was in the office, a fresh orchid on his desk, waiting. I spread the samples across his blotter, each labeled neatly. "Here you go," I said, "a gallery of scripts. Lydia's elegant, Amelia's precise, Slade's scrawled, Fisk's clinical, Thorne's bold, Krebs's artistic with those flourishes." Wolfe leaned forward, his bulk shifting like a mountain settling, and pulled out his magnifying glass, a relic from his Montenegro days, or so he claimed. He pored over them, grunting like a bear nosing through honeycombs. "Pfui," he muttered at Lydia's. "Too refined." Amelia's drew a nod. Methodical. Slade's, chaotic but deliberate. Fisk's, tremulous. Thorne's, arrogant. But Krebs's sample, a quick Otto Krebs consultant, made him pause. "See here, Archie, the flourish on the K? A loop too elaborate, echoing Poe's style in the forgeries I've seen, but altered, as if masking his hand." I peered over his shoulder. "You think Krebs forged the Poe manuscript?" "Possibly," Wolfe said, setting down the glass. "Or contributed. The ink on his sample, fresh, with a sheen, compared to the blotter from Hargrove's desk." He gestured to the items I'd bagged from the study. The blotter's stains matched Krebs's ink in color and texture. He was involved, but the poison, that is the enigma. While Wolfe mulled, I headed to the morgue, where a contact of mine, a clerk named Benny with a weakness for 20s, had pulled the Hargrove autopsy report. I slipped him a bill, and he handed over a copy, glancing around like we were trading state secrets. The report confirmed what Wolfe suspected: arsenic poisoning, slow-acting, likely absorbed through the skin over hours. No internal ingestion, ruling out food or drink. Elias had trace amounts in his bloodstream, consistent with contact from the manuscript's pages. The coroner had noted frothing at the mouth, a classic sign, but the heart condition had masked it initially. I pocketed the report and headed back, stopping at Doc Vollmer's for the vial analyses. Vollmer, a wiry doctor with a face like a friendly ferret, met me in his lab. "Archie, your samples." He held up 2 reports. Thorne's vial, ink solvent, as he said, ethanol-based, harmless unless you drink it. Krebs's, similar, but with traces of arsenic, diluted but present. Could be a cleaning agent gone wrong, or intentional. Bingo. I thanked him and raced back to the brownstone. Wolfe was in the dining room tackling lunch. Terrapin soup with sherry, his favorite for brain work. I slid the autopsy and analyses across the table. Arsenic confirmed, skin absorption. Krebs's vial has traces, Thorne's clean. Wolfe sipped his beer, eyes narrowing. The web tightens. Krebs laced the ink, perhaps. But motive? Revisit Miss Voss. Her handwriting is precise, secretarial, but with hidden passion. Press her. I grabbed my hat and headed to the Hargrove mansion. Amelia was in the library, sorting Elias's papers, her glasses perched on her nose like a judge's gavel. "Mr. Goodwin," she said, voice steady but eyes wary. "More questions?" I didn't waste time. "Amelia, level with me? Elias? Was he kind to you? Or did he treat you like furniture?" She paused, her hand stilling on a stack of letters. "He was demanding. Paid me little, expected much, and he flirted, shamelessly, in front of Lydia sometimes. But I didn't kill him." "Motive enough for some," I said. "And you had access to the manuscript." "Handled it, maybe?" Her face cracked, a tear slipping. "He was cruel, yes. But I loved my work, the books, the history. I wouldn't poison him." I softened. "What about the arsenic? Know anything about Fisk's tonic?" She shook her head. "Dr. Fisk prescribed it for Elias's nerves. A bottle went missing last month. Elias accused the staff, but nothing came of it. Theft." I noted it and left, her sobs echoing behind me. Next stop, Fisk's office on Park Avenue, a sterile suite with waiting room chairs that screamed discomfort. Fisk was with a patient, but I badgered his nurse until he emerged, face flushed. "Goodwin, this is harassment." "Just a chat," I said, following him to his desk. "Your tonic, arsenic-based?" He sat, hands trembling. "Low dose, therapeutic, for anxiety. But yes, arsenic compound. The bottle's missing from my bag. Noticed it after Elias's death." "Stolen? By whom?" "I don't know. I left my bag in the Hargrove foyer that night. Anyone could have." Anyone. Motive and opportunity multiplying. I reported back to Wolfe over dinner, squab with wild rice, Fritz's specialty. Amelia's got resentment. Fisk's got the missing poison. Krebs's vial ties in. Wolfe chewed thoughtfully. The tonic was stolen, laced into the ink or pages. The forger, Krebs, provided the medium. But who orchestrated? He summoned Kramer that evening, the inspector arriving with Stebbins, cigar unlit and temper lit. "Wolfe, you got proof or just hot air?" Wolfe laid out the autopsy, the analyses. "Arsenic, Inspector, from contact. Arrest no one yet. The web tightens. But watch them. The poisoner will slip." Kramer grumbled but took copies, leaving with a warning. "If you're wrong, I'll have your license." As night fell, the brownstone quieted. Wolfe retired to his book, but I paced, the inks and intrigues swirling in my head. Amelia's tears, Fisk's tremor, Krebs's stains, clues piling like autumn leaves. The case was inking toward revelation, dark and deliberate as a forger's stroke. Chapter 7. The Archival Dive. The morning sun pierced the New York haze, casting long shadows across the brownstone's office where I, Archie Goodwin, was nursing a coffee and reviewing my notes from the past few days. The Hargrove case was a tangle of ink, arsenic, and lies, with Otto Krebs's forger's hands and Dr. Fisk's missing tonic at the center. Nero Wolfe, ensconced in his chair with a breakfast tray of brioche and smoked sturgeon, had decreed today's mission: verify the Poe manuscript's historical context. If the poison pen was a fake, as Krebs claimed, its origins might point to the poisoner. If genuine, the stakes were even higher. My destination was the New York Public Library's Rare Books Room, a crypt of knowledge where the past whispered louder than the present. The library's stone lions stood guard on Fifth Avenue, their gazes as stern as Wolfe's when I forget his beer. Inside, the Rare Books Room was a noir sanctum, green-shaded lamps casting pools of light on oak tables, air heavy with the scent of aged paper and wax polish. The curator, a bespectacled woman named Miss Eleanor Pratt, met me with the wariness of someone guarding holy relics. Her gray hair was pulled tight, her eyes sharper than a paper cutter. "Mr. Goodwin," she said, her voice a low hum. "You're here about Poe, I presume?" Mr. Wolfe's reputation for eccentricity precedes him. I flashed my best grin. "Eccentricity pays the bills, Miss Pratt. I need everything you've got on Edgar Allan Poe's unpublished works, especially anything called The Poisoned Pen." She led me to a locked cabinet, her keys jingling like a jailer's. "Poe's bibliography is a labyrinth," she said, pulling out a ledger and a folder of microfiche. His final years, 1847 to 1849, were chaotic. He was ill, erratic, producing fragments. There's mention in his letters of a novella, untitled, about poison and betrayal, but no record of the poisoned pen by name. A Baltimore collector claimed to have a fragment in the 1880s, but it vanished. If it surfaced, it would be extraordinary. I scribbled notes, my pulse quickening. "Any chance it's a forgery?" Her lips pursed. "Possible. Poe's style is mimicked often, his flourishes, his cadence. But the paper, the ink, those are harder to fake. I'd need to see it. No manuscript today," I said. "It's missing." "What about Victor Slade or Otto Krebs? They ever poke around here?" Her eyes narrowed. "Slade's been here, asking about Poe manuscripts last year." "Shifty man, always sniffing for rarities. Krebs, I don't know, but forgers are a plague. They'd need access to Poe's originals to mimic them." She showed me a sample of Poe's handwriting, a letter to his publisher, 1848, all frantic loops and jagged lines. It matched Krebs's sketch from his workshop, but cleaner, more authentic. I thanked her and headed out, the library's gloom clinging to me like damp wool. The manuscript's existence was plausible, but unproven, a shadow in Poe's fevered final days. My next stop was Reginald Thorne's penthouse on Park Avenue, a palace of glass and steel with a view that could make a poet weep. I'd called ahead, but Thorne wasn't home. Convenient. His butler, a stiff named Morton, let me in after some fast talk about Wolfe's investigation. "Mister, Thorne's at an auction," Morton said, his accent clipped. "He'll be back this evening." I didn't have a warrant, but I had nerve. "Mind if I look at his library?" "Just checking his Poe collection." Morton hesitated, then shrugged. The library was a collector's dream, shelves of first editions, a glass case with Poe letters, and a safe hidden behind a false panel of Moby Dick volumes. I didn't touch it, too risky without Saul's lock-picking skills, but I noted its make, a Mosler, like Hargrove's. Inside the case, Poe ephemera, letters, a signed Tamerlane, but no poisoned pen. A notebook on Thorne's desk had auction bids, including one for Poe M.S. Baltimore, $45,000, outbid by E.H. Elias Hargrove. Thorne's resentment was real. I left before Morton got suspicious, but not before slipping a note under a blotter. Wolfe wants you tonight, 7 p.m. Back at the brownstone, Fritz was prepping lunch, veal chops with sage and a beet salad. Wolfe was in the office, a new orchid on his desk, a phalaenopsis with petals like pale secrets. I reported, the library's Poe lore, the missing manuscript's ghost, Thorne's safe. No poisoned pen, I said, but Thorne's got motive. Hargrove beat him to it. Wolfe sipped his beer, eyes half closed. The manuscript's authenticity remains elusive, but the poison is certain. Thorne's safe. Contents. Didn't crack it. Mosler, like Hargrove's. Needs Saul. He nodded. Engage Mr. Panzer and Slade. His absence is troubling. Slade had vanished after the dinner. His shop shuttered. I called Saul, who tracked him to a motel in Jersey City, a flea bag called the Inkwell. I grabbed my hat and drove across the Hudson, the city's skyline fading into a gray smear. The motel was a dump, all peeling paint and flickering signs. Slade's room, number 12, was locked, but the clerk, greased with a 10, let me in. Slade was there, unshaven, his tweed suit a wreck, pacing like a caged weasel. "Goodwin," he croaked, "you're going to get me killed." "Talk," I said, blocking the door. "Who's after you?" "Thorne? Krebs?" He collapsed on the bed, hands shaking. "Thorne? He threatened me. Said if I didn't sell the Poe to Hargrove, he'd ruin me. Said he had plans for that manuscript, plans like poison." Slade's eyes widened. "I didn't kill nobody. I sold what I was told was real." I leaned in. "Who told you?" He clammed up, fear sealing his lips. I left him with a warning. Be at Wolfe's tonight, or Kramer hauls you. Back in the city, I called Saul to watch Slade. He wasn't running again. At the brownstone, Wolfe was in the plant rooms, misting orchids with Theodore. I gave him the rundown, Pratt's Poe lore, Thorne's safe, Slade's panic. "Slade's scared of Thorne," I said. "Says he was forced to sell the manuscript." Wolfe snipped a leaf, his eyes gleaming. "The web is taut, Archie. The poisoner used the manuscript as a lure, but the motive lies deeper. Jealousy, greed, or betrayal. Tonight's dinner will force a move. Fritz was setting the table, lamb with rosemary, roasted potatoes, and a claret to loosen secrets. The suspects were confirmed: Lydia, Amelia, Fisk, Thorne, Slade, and, with luck, Krebs. Saul was on his way to Jersey to drag Slade back. The archival dive had clarified the manuscript's shadow, but the poisoned source was still murky. Tonight, Wolfe would tighten the screws, and I'd be watching for the crack in the facade, ink-stained, arsenic-laced, or otherwise. Chapter 8. The Confrontation. The brownstone on West 35th Street was a pressure cooker by the time the clock struck 7, the air thick with the scent of Fritz's beef Wellington and the undercurrent of suspicion that clung to every guest. Nero Wolfe had orchestrated this second dinner like a chess master setting up a checkmate, and I, Archie Goodwin, was his knight, ready to leap into the fray and spot the telltale twitch of a guilty hand. The dining room glowed under the chandelier, its light catching the crystal wine glasses and the strained faces of our suspects: Lydia Hargrove, Amelia Voss, Dr. Harlan Fisk, Reginald Thorne, Victor Slade, and, thanks to Saul Panzer's persistence, Otto Krebs. Inspector Kramer and Sergeant Stebbins lurked in the corner, Kramer's unlit cigar working overtime, his scowl promising trouble if Wolfe's theatrics didn't deliver. Fritz's menu was a masterpiece: tenderloin with Madeira sauce, asparagus spears, and a burgundy that flowed like liquid courage. But the conversation was stilted, each bite punctuated by glances that could cut glass. Lydia, in widow's black, toyed with her fork, her eyes darting to Slade, who sat hunched, his tweed suit a map of wrinkles. Amelia's hands were steady, but her glasses magnified a flicker of unease. Fisk sipped wine like it was his last meal, his fingers drumming a nervous rhythm. Thorne, ever the aristocrat, ate with gusto, but his smile was a blade, slicing through the tension. Krebs, gaunt and ink-stained, looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, his eyes fixed on his plate. Wolfe, at the head of the table, consumed his meal with the serene focus of a man who knew the board was his. Post-dinner, we adjourned to the office, where Wolfe settled into his oversized chair, a fresh beer at hand, his bulk a monument to certainty. The suspects arranged themselves in a semicircle, Lydia in the red leather chair, Amelia and Fisk on either side, Thorne leaning against a bookcase with a smirk, Slade and Krebs in stiff-backed chairs, looking like men awaiting execution. Kramer stood by the door, Stebbins at his shoulder, both radiating impatience. I took my place at my desk, notebook ready, eyes scanning for the crack Wolfe promised. Wolfe began, his voice a low rumble that filled the room like fog rolling off the Hudson. Elias Hargrove was murdered, poisoned by arsenic applied to the pages of a manuscript purported to be Edgar Allan Poe's The Poisoned Pen. The manuscript was stolen, likely to conceal the crime, but its absence only sharpens the puzzle. Each of you had means, motive, or opportunity. Let us dissect. Lydia straightened, her voice sharp. Mister Wolfe, I've said it was murder. I want the killer found, and the manuscript. Thorne chuckled, his cufflinks glinting. You want the manuscript, Lydia, or the millions it's worth? Elias's death was convenient for your bank account. Her face flushed. You're vile, Reginald. Elias loved me. Slade cut in, his mustache twitching. Let's not pretend Hargrove was a saint. He bought the manuscript from me, genuine, I swear. But if it was poisoned, it happened after. Amelia's voice was quiet, cutting. After you delivered it, mister. Slade, you had access. And you, Mr. Thorne, were furious Elias outbid you. Thorne's smile didn't waver. Jealousy? Please, I have my own Poe collection. Hargrove's win was a minor sting. Fisk cleared his throat, his hands clammy. I've told you, his heart failed. I saw no poison signs until later. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Dr. Fisk, your tonic contained arsenic stolen from your bag. A convenient oversight. He turned to Krebs. Mr. Krebs, you identified the manuscript as a forgery, yet your hand stained with ink suggests you crafted it, or it's poison. Krebs's eyes darted. I told Slade it was fake. I didn't forge it, and I didn't poison nobody. Kramer snorted. Wolfe, you're spinning fairy tales. The coroner's report leaned heart attack until your autopsy pushed arsenic. Where's your proof? Wolfe leaned back, fingers steepled. Proof lies in the details. The manuscript's ink, fresh, not aged, was laced with arsenic from Dr. Fisk's tonic. The poison was applied post-purchase, requiring access to Hargrove's study. His gaze locked on Amelia. Miss Voss, you handled his papers daily. Your handwriting, precise yet passionate, mirrors the forged additions on the manuscript's margins as Mr. Krebs's sketch confirms Amelia's glasses slipped, her voice a hiss. Prove it, Mr. Wolfe. I loved my work, not Elias. I didn't touch the manuscript after he locked it away. Wolfe's smile was cold. Indeed. Yet you were in the house, alone, when he died. And you, Mr. Slade, delivered a manuscript you knew was questionable, pressured by Mr. Thorne's threats. Slade paled. I told you Thorne forced me to sell it. Thorne laughed. Forced? You're a liar, Slade. I was at a gala. Hundreds saw me. I jumped in, sensing the moment. Thorne's gala checks out, but his safe holds Poe ephemera, and he's got a vial of solvent, clean but suspicious. Krebs's vial had arsenic traces, and Lydia's perfume was on the safe's dial. Care to explain that, Mrs. Hargrove? Lydia's hand froze on her purse. I checked the safe after Elias died. It was my right. Wolfe's eyes gleamed. A right or a cover? The poisoner knew Hargrove's habits, his obsession with handling manuscripts ungloved. The ink was the weapon, the manuscript the bait. The room crackled, accusations bouncing like ricochets. Amelia accused Slade of fraud. Slade pointed at Thorne's jealousy. Fisk muttered about malpractice fears, and Lydia wept, her poise crumbling. Krebs sat silent, his hands clenched, ink stains black as guilt. Kramer growled, Wolfe, you're stirring a hornet's nest. Name the killer, or I'm out. Wolfe sipped his beer, unruffled. Patience, Inspector. The killer's hand is in this room, and their motive is clear. Greed, revenge, or both. Tomorrow, we analyze the safe's contents in Krebs's workshop. For now, observe their eyes. They betray what words conceal. As Fritz served coffee, I watched the suspects. Lydia's tears seemed staged. Amelia's gaze was steel behind her glasses. Fisk's hands trembled. Thorne's smirk faltered. Slade's eyes darted to Krebs, and Krebs stared at the floor, his fingers twitching. The confrontation had cracked their masks, but the killer's face was still shadowed. Wolfe was tightening the noose, and I was ready to spot the twitch that would hang them. Chapter 9. The twist unwinds. The Brownstones' office was a crucible of tension the morning after the confrontation, the air heavy with the scent of Fritz's brewing coffee, and the unspoken accusations lingering from last night's dinner. Nero Wolfe sat behind his desk, a fresh orchid, a cattleya with petals like bruised moonlight, set beside his beer, his bulk radiating the calm certainty of a man who'd already solved the puzzle, but was waiting for the pieces to confess. I, Archie Goodwin, was at my desk, notebook open, replaying the suspect's reactions. Lydia's staged tears, Amelia's steely gaze, Fisk's trembling hands, Thorne's faltering smirk, Slade's nervous glances at Krebs, and Krebs's ink-stained silence. The case was a knot, and Wolfe was about to pull the thread that would unravel it. Wolfe had summoned the suspects back for a final reckoning, and they trickled in by 10 a.m., each looking like they'd slept on a bed of nails. Lydia Hargrove, in a gray dress that matched her pallor, clutched her purse like a lifeline. Amelia Voss, her glasses polished to a gleam, sat ramrod straight, her hands folded but tense. Dr. Harlan Fisk, his suit more wrinkled than ever, fidgeted with a pen, his eyes darting. Reginald Thorne leaned against the bookcase, his tuxedo swapped for a tweed blazer, his charm brittle as cracked glass. Victor Slade slunk in, his mustache drooping, his eyes avoiding Krebs, who sat in a corner, his gaunt frame hunched, fingers black with ink. Inspector Kramer and Sergeant Stebbins stood by the door, Kramer's cigar unlit but chewed to a pulp, his patience thinner than a dime. Wolfe leaned back, fingers steepled, his voice a low rumble that commanded the room. "We are here to resolve the murder of Elias Hargrove, poisoned by arsenic, laced into the ink of a manuscript, the poisoned pen, purportedly by Edgar Allan Poe. The manuscript was stolen, but its theft was a feint, meant to obscure the crime. The poisoner is among us, their motive rooted in betrayal, greed, or vengeance. Let us unravel the truth." He turned to Lydia, his eyes sharp. "Mrs. Hargrove, you hired me, claiming murder, yet your perfume, rose with a bourbon bite, was found on the safe's dial. You checked it after Elias's death, you said. Why?" Lydia's lips parted, her voice unsteady. "It was my right. Elias kept everything there, our future. I had to know if the manuscript was gone." Wolfe's gaze didn't waver. "Indeed. But you knew more than you admitted. Elias was unfaithful, was he not?" With Miss Voss, Amelia gasped, her glasses slipping. "That's a lie. Elias was inappropriate, but I never—" Lydia cut her off, her voice venomous. "Don't deny it, Amelia. I saw the way he looked at you, the late nights in the study. You wanted his attention, his money." Amelia's face flushed. "I wanted my job, not him. You're delusional." Wolfe raised a hand, silencing them. "Mrs. Hargrove, your jealousy was a spark. You discovered Elias's affair, and it festered. You had access to the study, the safe, and doctor. Fisk's tonic, stolen, arsenic-laced. You enlisted Mr. Krebs to forge a duplicate manuscript laced with poison, knowing Elias would handle it ungloved, his obsession, his undoing." Lydia's eyes widened, her purse slipping to the floor. "That's absurd. I loved Elias." Krebs stirred, his voice a rasp. "I didn't forge nothing for her. Slade brought me the manuscript to authenticate, said it was real. I told him it was fake, but he sold it anyway." Slade jumped up, his face pale. "I didn't know it was poisoned. Thorne pressured me to sell it to Hargrove, said he'd ruin me if I didn't." Thorne's smirk vanished. "Lies. I was at the gala. I had no part in this." Fisk's pen snapped in his hand. "My tonic was therapeutic. Someone stole it. I'm not the killer." Kramer growled, stepping forward. "Wolfe, you're throwing darts blindfolded." "Where's the evidence?" Wolfe sipped his beer, unruffled. "Evidence? The autopsy confirms arsenic, absorbed through the skin. The safe's dial bears Mrs. Hargrove's perfume. Mr. Krebs's sketch matches the forged manuscript's layout, and his vial contained arsenic traces. But the twist, Inspector, lies in the manuscript itself." He turned to Amelia. "Miss Voss, you handled Elias's papers. You suspected the manuscript was tampered with, did you not?" Amelia's hands clenched. I thought it was strange. Elias was so careful, but that night he was frantic, handling it without gloves. I warned him, but he wouldn't listen." Wolfe nodded. "You knew it was a fake because you saw the original. You switched it, didn't you, to protect Elias or to expose the fraud?" The room froze. Amelia's glasses fogged, her voice barely a whisper. Yes, I found the real manuscript in the safe earlier that day. It was genuine. Poe's hand, 1849. I swapped it with a blank quarto, hoping to test Elias's judgment. But I didn't poison it." Wolfe's eyes gleamed. "Precisely. The fake was poisoned, not the original. Mrs. Hargrove, you provided the arsenic, stolen from Fisk's tonic, and enlisted Krebs to lace the ink. You swapped the manuscripts, believing the fake was real, ensuring Elias's death. Lydia collapsed, sobbing. He betrayed me. With her, I wanted him to suffer, but I didn't mean I thought the manuscript was real. Kramer's jaw dropped. You're saying Lydia poisoned a fake manuscript thinking it was Poe's? Wolfe nodded. The irony is Poe-esque. Miss Voss's switch preserved the original, but doomed Elias to the poisoned fake. The theft was Lydia's panic, hiding her crime. I leaned forward, catching up. So Amelia's innocent? She was protecting the real Poe? Indeed, Wolfe said. Her forgery was minor, notes to frame Thorne, whom she despised for his arrogance. But Lydia's hand penned the murder. Krebs slumped, muttering, I didn't know she'd poison it. I just made the pages like she asked Fisk's face was ashen. My tonic. I never thought. Thorne laughed, bitter. A comedy of errors, Wolfe. And I'm just a bystander. Slade shrank, silent. Kramer signaled Stebbins. All right, Wolfe. Lydia's under arrest. But where's the real manuscript? Wolfe smiled, a rare glint of triumph. Miss Voss, I presume? Amelia nodded, tears falling. In my room, hidden. I couldn't let it be lost. Kramer growled but sent Stebbins to fetch it. The room dissolved into murmurs, Lydia's sobs the loudest. Wolfe leaned back, satisfied. The twist unwinds, Archie. A tale of jealousy, preserved by chance. Poe would approve. I grinned. You played them like a fiddle, boss. He waved a hand. Merely logic. Now, fetch me another beer. The case was cracking open, but one act remained. The manuscript's fate, and Wolfe's final flourish. Chapter 10. Resolution with Flourish. The brownstone on West 35th Street was a haven of quiet triumph the morning after Lydia Hargrove's confession, the air scented with Fritz Brenner's fresh-baked brioche and the faint musk of Nero Wolfe's orchids drifting from the rooftop. I, Archie Goodwin, sat at my desk, typing up notes on the Hargrove case, the clack of my typewriter a counterpoint to the city's distant hum. Wolfe was in his oversized chair, a bottle of beer sweating on the desk, his eyes half closed in the contented haze of a puzzle solved. The office felt like a stage after the curtains fall, the drama of Elias Hargrove's murder resolved, yet the final act lingered, the fate of the genuine Poe manuscript and Wolfe's inevitable flourish to seal the case with intellectual panache. Inspector Kramer had hauled Lydia off in handcuffs the previous night, her sobs echoing as Sergeant Stebbins escorted her to the squad car. Amelia Voss, cleared of murder but guilty of a minor forgery, had retrieved the authentic, the poisoned pen from her room at the Hargrove mansion, a quarto of 12 pages, Poe's spidery script unmistakable, dated 1849. She'd handed it to Kramer, her hands trembling, her glasses fogged with relief. The manuscript was now locked in evidence, pending verification by experts, but Wolfe had no doubt of its authenticity. The rest of the suspects, Dr. Harlan Fisk, Reginald Thorne, Victor Slade, and Otto Krebs, had scattered, their roles in the drama clarified but their shadows lingering. Wolfe sipped his beer, his voice a low rumble as he broke the silence. Archie, the case is satisfactory, a tale of jealousy woven with Poe's own irony. Mrs. Hargrove's betrayal poisoned her husband, but Miss Voss's act preserved a literary treasure, a fitting denouement. I leaned back, grinning. Fitting, sure, but you're not done, are you? You've got that look, like you're about to drop a final zinger. He grunted, a sound of mild reproach. Do not be impertinent. The facts speak. Lydia Hargrove, consumed by jealousy over Elias's affair with Miss Voss, stole Dr. Fisk's arsenic tonic and enlisted Krebs to forge a duplicate manuscript. She laced its ink with poison, believing it the original, and swapped it into the safe. Elias, obsessive and ungloved, handled it, absorbing the arsenic through his skin. His death was slow, agonizing, Poe-esque in its cruelty. I nodded, piecing it together. And Amelia? She swapped the manuscripts to test Elias's judgment, not knowing Lydia's plan. Saved the real Poe, but couldn't save him. Precisely, Wolfe said, his fingers steepled. Her minor forgery, notes to implicate Thorne, was a misstep, born of resentment for his arrogance. Thorne, Slade, and Fisk were peripheral. Thorne's jealousy, a motive without action. Slade's fraud, a catalyst. Fisk's negligence, a tool. The theft of the fake manuscript was Lydia's panic, an attempt to erase her crime, but her perfume betrayed her. I typed a final line, then looked up. The manuscript, what happens to it? Museum? Auction? Wolfe's eyes glinted, a rare spark of mischief. Neither, Archie. I have arranged with Miss Voss for its temporary custody. It will reside in my library, under lock and key, until the estate settles. Poe deserves better company than a museum vault. I laughed. You're keeping it? That's your flourish, isn't it? The great Nero Wolfe, collector of literary ghosts. He waved a hand, dismissing the jest. Merely a steward? Its value is intellectual, not monetary. Now summon Fritz. I require lunch. Fritz appeared as if conjured, announcing a menu of squab stuffed with wild mushrooms, roasted parsnips, and a claret to match Wolfe's mood. As we moved to the dining room, Kramer phoned, his voice gruff but grudgingly respectful. Wolfe, the manuscript's verified. Genuine Poe, worth a fortune. Lydia's confessed fully. Jealousy, the tonic, Krebs's forgery. You were right, damn you. But don't expect an apology, Wolfe, already seated, replied, I expect only competence, Inspector. Good day. He hung up, his lips curving slightly. Lunch was a quiet celebration, the squab melting like a confession, the claret loosening the last knots of the case. I thought of Lydia, her elegant facade shattered, Amelia, her loyalty to rare books redeeming her, and Poe, whose shadow had woven a murder as dark as his tales. The manuscript, safe in Wolfe's hands, was a fitting prize, a relic of betrayal and genius, preserved by a twist as clever as its author. As Fritz cleared the plates, I raised my glass. To Poe, and to you, boss. You played this like a symphony. Wolfe sipped his beer, his eyes on the orchid. To logic, Archie, and orchids. They demand less drama. He paused, then added, Satisfactory. The case was closed, the puzzle solved with a flourish worthy of Poe's pen. I filed my notes, knowing the brownstone would soon hum with a new mystery. But for now, the air was clear, the resolution as sharp and witty as Wolfe's mind.